Hello, welcome to Adversary of my Adversary, to which we forgot to do this last week, so that kind of sucked. But we're back. Our logo's missing though. Let's see here. Find it. There we go. Wait, gotta bring it. There we go. It's back. All right. So for this evening, what we're going to be talking about off the bat is welcome, Gray. Welcome. So we're going to talk about a subject that's probably going to get us in trouble with a lot of people, or at least make a lot of people angry, because a lot of people are going to completely disagree with our stance on this. So let the hate comments begin, I guess. Anyway, what we're going to be talking about is the challenges of being conservative, being a conservative occultist in a liberal subculture. Right? So most people in the occult would consider themselves liberal or leftist or something of that nature, and many would go as far as saying is that you can't be conservative and an occultist. We obviously wholeheartedly disagree. We're actually kind of tired of seeing most conservatives being Christian. It's kind of disappointing. Some people have some really good views, and then they're like, oh yeah, God, and they're like, oh, you ruined it. So first, to start out, let's kind of quickly define what it means to be a conservative occultist. Now, what are we talking about? Now, we're not inherently talking about politics, right? We're not necessarily talking about being politically conservative, though to some degree, I suppose there is some overlap and maybe some parallels there, but that's not necessarily, or inherently kind of like the idea, right? It's not like being a conservative occultist doesn't mean you're sucking Donald Trump's dick, right? Like it just, that's not what that means. I would say, I think the biggest points of being a conservative, is family values is a big one. Values in a relationship, like what is valued in a relationship, monogamy over, polyamory. So, what are some other things that you can think of?
I think it's easier for me to describe what it's not.
Okay. So what is it not?
I think there's a bit of an irony when it comes to the term liberal, because I actually find that there's more freedom within conservatism than there is in the liberal side of things, especially today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it used to be this way. In fact, I know it didn't used to be this way.
Me too.
10 years ago, I did not consider myself conservative. I would have considered myself to be left-leaning, a liberal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what conservatism today is more so just like being centrist,
mm-hmm.
and kind of like old school libertarian. And it's not necessarily in the social sense. Do you mind turning the music off? It's distracting. It's not necessarily just like socially, but also, like freedom of speech is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom of speech is a massive one. And I feel like that's something that is definitely in the UK right now being targeted. That there's people getting arrested for literally saying things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people massively misinterpret what freedom of speech is, because they're like, oh, what, people can just say what they want and get away with it? It's like, no, because if you say something that is just inherently offensive, there is inevitably going to be a consequence. Like, people aren't going to let you get away with that. But in terms of an opinion, it's you should be allowed to use your voice and express your opinion, because if you're not, then that begins to affect your inherent freedom and your autonomy. Conservative include traditional gender roles. Yeah, I somewhat agree with that.
Yeah, I do as well.
I definitely feel more comfortable in the so-called feminine roles. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
In the feminine role?
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, I definitely feel kind of like, more comfortable kind of like in traditional kind of like, masculine kind of roles, or like, identifying that way. And it's not even, I guess it's not even identifying, because I feel like I always hated the term identify, because, identifying is to say you think you are something, but you're not, right? Like, I identify this way. So it's more of like, I just feel more comfortable like living in, masculine roles. And so respectfully, I see both constructs as false dichotomies myself through the lens of occultism. How so?
I mean, I agree with that somewhat, as in they are constructs, and you said two wings of the same bird, and I'd say like two sides of the same coin, in the sense that, like, it is, I don't like calling it like the right and the left, because what people think of when you say the right and the left, they think, okay, you've got the white power on one side and then the communists on the other side. Like,
right.
The people neglect the grey area massively, right?
Yeah.
But I think what our point is here is that it is actually kind of highlighting what you're saying in a way, because it's gotten to a point where the left-hand path, especially, not necessarily the left-hand path, but let's just say like magical paths as a whole, even like, the more kind of atheistic ones, like atheistic Satanism, for example. Like, atheistic Satanism is massively associated with left-wing politics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that these constructs are actually harmful to occultism as a whole, because it implies that this is the way you have to think if this is the way that you're practicing. And I suppose we are posing as something kind of adversarial to that.
Yeah.
Because you can adopt a different construct, and that construct doesn't have to be entirely intertwined with the left-hand path, if that makes sense. Like, when I'm doing ritual work, I'm not in my sort of conservative shit, I'm not sitting there going, oh, there's only two genders, like, and things like that.
Yeah.
Don't hate me for that, but it's what I think. Like, it can be an entirely separate thing. So yeah, through the lens of occultism, sure, but sort of in daily life, where you are in the mundane and you are living your life according to your values and beliefs, it is a thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I kind of miss the days where it didn't matter where you aligned politically. Like, it was like, you didn't have to, like, there wasn't like this overt lens over like what side you leaned on. It was like, I liked some shit, I didn't like other shit, I agreed with this, I disagreed with that, and nobody gave a fuck. It's like you talk about your opinions, and that's all it is. It's your opinion. It doesn't change how someone else feels, and it doesn't change the direction shit's going. It was just a conversation. I mean, I used to have horribly heated debates with people that agreed with me on most things, like when it came like to politics and shit. And like we would sit over a glass of scotch, screaming and yelling at each other, you know, and laughing, you know, about our opinions and giving each other information. And then an hour later, where we're sitting there playing fucking Halo on the Xbox, you know, like buds, you know. The next day, didn't even think about the conversation. You know, it's just something that kind of happened in the moment, and it didn't really matter. You know, we both learned from each other. Like, you know, we both talked about what it was that we understood and what we've heard. And we learned from each other. We grew from it. It was an opportunity to learn from the other side and, you know, change your own opinions. And now it's just a lot of, I don't know, like repressed rage or some shit. You know, people trying to, you know, hurt other people because they disagree with them. And it's just kind of, it's just kind of sad, you know. You know, and I don't outwardly like I don't outwardly label myself really anything. I think conservatism to a certain degree definitely fits, you know, my ideological standpoint more than anything else. But there's a lot of shit that I disagree with on the conservative side of shit. You know, I think, you know, some of the things that I listed for this would be like, you know, family, discipline, personal responsibility. Honestly, I think that there's more personal responsibility, especially when we're talking about the left-hand path. I honestly think the left-hand path aligns with conservatism more than it does with libertarianism. It's simply because of the personal responsibility, the accountability aspect of it. You know, when you look at the left, I mean, the left is constantly playing the victim card. They're a victim of fucking everything, right? At least most of the major publicized shit, you know, that you see on the internet that gets the rotations, right? That does the rounds and shit. You know, is that the outlook or mindset or actuation of everyone that's a libertarian or a liberal? Probably not. But what we've come to understand since, you know, for the last, 10 years, is, you know, this victim mentality. And I do believe that people are victims of many atrocities. But I think that victimhood is something that, like, you choose to live in after a certain while, you know? And it's just one of those things that, you know, the left-hand path isn't about being a victim. It's about accepting your own responsibility and your own accountability in certain things.
Yeah, I get that, Gray. Like, I simply prefer to select my opinions on specific issues without aligning to all views. I definitely was like that at first, and then when I started to express certain views online, people were like, "Oh my god, you're a conservative!" Like, I must unfollow. And at the time, I was like, "What? I didn't say that I was, because I genuinely didn't label myself as that." And I think the reason I didn't was because of that negative connotation, right? But then when I was watching content online, for example, like, I love Blair White. I think she is one of my favorite people to watch on YouTube. Yeah, and where I was watching, you know, Blair White a lot, and I just found myself kind of agreeing more and more with things. It was a case of like, okay, I think, you know, this is where I fall on the spectrum. And yeah, I mean, I can't sit here and say that I align with all conservative views.
Neither do I.
Like, I don't, especially because, like you said at the beginning, is that most conservatives are Christian. And what's been really disappointing is that, you know, I've probably watched Blair White for the best part of like 3 or 4 years, and only recently she's like converted to Christianity and Jesus her Lord and Savior, and I'm just like, for fuck's sake, why does this always happen? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, Gray, too. I completely agree with you. The illusion of choice is a form of control, in your opinion. No, I completely agree. I don't even think that's opinion. I think that's fact. I think the illusion of choice is a form of control. It's not an opinion. That's just fact. Like when we're talking red and blue, that's an illusion. That is a fucking illusion. They're both pieces of shit, right? All politicians are pieces of shit, all of them. You know, and
Some more than others.
And I think that is an important distinction of why we're kind of like putting out there, like we're not talking about the political aspect of it, which is difficult when you're talking about being a conservative, because people immediately jump on the political bandwagon. Right? They're like, oh, so you support this person, you support that person. No, I don't. I don't support any of them. I honestly think they're all fucking full of shit.
Yeah, like I might have views that align with like certain policies, but when it comes to like the sides themselves, it's like no. Like for example, over here, like it's different to like I personally prefer American politics. I think it's way more entertaining, and
it is
just like. And yeah, ours over here is just pathetic in comparison in the UK. But like over here, if I say that I'm conservative, I'm labelled as a Tory, and it's like, oh, you're probably rich, you're probably like really privileged, and all of this kind of thing. It's like, no, I come from a working class family, and my conservative views and values have nothing to do with the Conservative government, which I actually have a lot of disdain for, just as I do with the Labour Party, which are, you know, the ones more on the left. So yeah.
So to continue kind of like that point, right? So holding traditional values when we talk about family, discipline, and personal responsibility. Personal responsibility, I think, is the big one. Family and discipline. So I think that on the left, I think I don't want to say the left. Let's change that and let's say with liberal. Let's just say liberal, because we're talking conservative and then liberal, right? So I think that, you know, when it comes to family values and discipline within the family and things like that, I think that that's very sparse with liberal culture. I definitely take a more conservative leaning on the idea of family and, you know, personal discipline, which again, I find that to be a wholeheartedly a left-hand path value, is, you know, personal discipline and focusing on your goals and pushing yourself forward to obtain your goals. And kind of holding these things while practicing spiritual paths that are often associated with rebellion and counterculture, right? So now here's the thing, though. Like here's where I think we're at a confusing point in history. So we say that, you know, generally speaking, the occult in and of itself is something that celebrates counterculture and it celebrates rebellion. I mean, hell, the name of the show is Adversary of My Adversary, right? We celebrate adversarial points of views. But if you really look at the landscape, if you really look at how things are kind of how they are right now, being liberal isn't counterculture to anything. Being liberal is the culture, right? I mean, it is. So when you're rebelling against something that doesn't necessarily exist, it's like you're finding excuses to be angry, you know. The turning point for me, like what Dyra said, was freedom of speech. Like, I don't believe in freedom of consequence. I believe in freedom of speech. I'm one of those people that I believe to let the idiots say stupid shit so we know who the idiots fucking are. You know, like, I do not agree with fucking racists and fucking Nazis and shit like that, you know. I do believe that, you know, people that are racist and people that, you know, are the fucking neo-Nazis and shit like that, you know, people like that should be fucking, you know, dealt with accordingly. It's disgusting, you know, but at the same time, the only thing you do when you try to shut people like that down, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the only thing you successfully do is you push them underground. And then they can get bigger and stronger, and now you have no idea who's who. But as long as you have that, you know, freedom of speech aspect of it, and you let the idiots say stupid shit, at least, okay, you can say, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, and you're an idiot, right? And we know who they are, right? Because they out themselves, because they feel so goddamn comfortable talking their shit that at least we can identify them. You know, have you ever heard of cave people, citizens against virtually everything? I mean, I've not heard that, but I definitely like that. I definitely like that. It's always good to know who you're associating with. Let people talk honestly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, this is a topic that we've probably wanted to talk about at length for a while now, but have been apprehensive to do so because we don't want to. We're not intentionally trying to offend anyone. Right? Like, but at the same time, we're kind of getting to this point where it's like, it's kind of bullshit that we can't talk about how we feel about shit because it might upset someone, right? Because it might offend somebody, right? And it's just like what she said, like what's going on here in England, like people are getting fucking arrested for Facebook posts, right? I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Like the police are showing up at people's doors being like, hey, this person complained about your Facebook post and found it offensive. It's like, I'm sorry, but I'm one of those people that I fully and wholeheartedly believe that if you're offended, that's your fucking problem, not mine. You're the one that's offended. You're the one having feelings about something I said. You know, that's your shit that you need to work out. Not has nothing to do with me, right? Like you don't like what I'm saying, unsubscribe and go to another channel. You know, like it's that easy. Like nobody's forcing you to watch me. You know, and when it comes to the way people live, right? Like if we're talking about, you know, like if people are going to ask the question about like, you know, sexuality and transgenderism and stuff like that. If you are of competent mind and are an adult, you fucking do you, boo. I don't give a shit. Like I could give two fucks less, up, down. Like I couldn't care less, you know? In Argentina, also, there are people in prison for posting. Yeah, it shit like that just blows my fucking mind. That's just fucking ridiculous, you know? So it's just, I honestly believe, I think the cornerstone of a functioning society is the society's ability to communicate. It's one of the reasons why Apocrypha exists, why Apocrypha is what it is. Apocrypha has never been designed to be an echo chamber. I want contrary opinions. I want people to question me. I want to be able to question other people. It's an ability to have an open conversation so we can learn from each other, right? So moving forward, right? So emphasizing structure, order, and hierarchy within a spiritual framework. So how do you think we could break that one down?
What is that?
So it's the next part after that. It's emphasizing structure, order, and hierarchy within a spiritual framework. So do you think that conservatism plays a role in that at all? I mean, I would say I don't really think too much.
No.
Right? Like, I don't think so. I think when it comes to practice, like in practice, like being an occultist and a conservative, like you practice the same way other people practice. Like, I don't think that, do you feel pressured to assert your philosophical stance as a conservative or libertarian? No. I don't want to. So the like kind of like this semantically speaking, right? Feeling pressure to assert, you know, like my ideas is like kind of like forcing my ideas onto other people. I want to learn from people, and I would hope that people would want to understand why I think the way that I think. But I also like I want to know why people think the way that they think. Right? Like it's one of the biggest and most important conversations that I had with Mystic. Like when we first became friends like years ago, is, you know, we talked about, you know, our politics. And it was one of, honestly, the most heartfelt conversations I think I've ever had with someone that was that far left leaning. Because he actually spoke to me. He didn't talk at me. Like he spoke to me like a human being. He understood my perspective and my side of things. And, you know, I understood his and listened to his, and we both said, all right, well, we don't agree with each other, but I respect you, you know, and I respect your ideas. And, you know, I think that that's kind of like something that, you know, it needs to happen more often. Yeah. So I think jumping to the next part, number 2, would be kind of good. We kind of covered it a little bit, but I think going into more detail. So common misconceptions faced by conservative occultists. So the first one, assumption of incompatibility.
Right. This leads me on to something that I think irritates me the most about the association of, or like intertwining your politics with your practice, right? Is when the US election was happening and Trump won, everyone and their nan that knew something about witchcraft or lit candles for some random fucking Greek god were like, Apollo is mad, Lilith is mad, like Hecate is mad, everyone's fucking mad, right, about this election. I'm just like, who the fuck are you? Like, who the fuck actually are you to think that you can use these deities that you are working with to extend your political narrative? Like, I wasn't all up in everyone else's shit going, oh, like say, for example, like, obviously I'm not American, so I wouldn't have a say in it anyway, but say, for example, I was a Trump supporter and I was going, yeah, Lucifer's fucking, like, buzzing about this, you know, it is... Everyone would be like, what the fuck are you talking about, Dyra? You know? It just... And I actually commented on someone's video saying, is Lilith a Democrat? And I got fucking blocked. And it's like, they will not have a conversation with you. And then someone was like, that's such a disrespectful thing to say. I'm just like, well, I think it's disrespectful using Lilith as an extension of your fucking lefty rage that Trump won. Like, be mad about it, sure.
Yep.
You're allowed to be mad about it, but don't drag an ancient fucking deity, an ancient goddess, into it to back up your point because you don't feel strong enough saying it yourself. It really got to me, that shit, because I was just like, you're all full of shit, and you're spreading misinformation that, you know, these you know, that these gods and goddesses and demons and whatever have a fucking opinion or a political standpoint. And I posted about it on Instagram, and I didn't want it to become a political discussion in the comments, but obviously people started like slagging off Trump in the comment section. I'm just like, you do realize that that's not what the video was about. This video was not in support of Trump. It was me saying that using deities as an extension of your political narrative, no matter if you are blue or red, is fucking dumb. Mm-hmm. And people were like, the gods and the goddesses, they're inherently political. They've been used as, you know, for politics for centuries. Yeah, by who? By who? Humans.
Yeah. It doesn't make them inherently political. They think that anything that has a remote association with politics at some point in the history, you know, requires... It's like goth culture. It's like the whole argument with goth culture that goth culture is inherently left. And it's like, no, it's not. So what people don't understand is goth was birthed from like the 80s punk scene, which was inherently political, right? Punk was political. You couldn't get around it. Punk music was political. That, like, there's no two ways about it.
And it still fucking is.
And it still fucking is. Goth was birthed off of that because people wanted to separate the politics. They wanted to focus on the fashion and the music and the artistry and, you know, the fun, and extract the seriousness of the politics out of it. That's where goth was birthed from.
And you can tell by the music. You listen to punk music, you can hear the political narrative.
Yeah.
You listen to goth music, like, give me an example of like a punk band.
Fucking Sex Pistols.
Yeah, listen to Sex Pistols, and then listen to The Cure.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly. It's a whole other world. Now, did some goth musicians reincorporate politics into some shit? Of course they did. But the style of music, the whole point of it was to separate itself from that, to create something that was for an era that wasn't so angry anymore, right? That was focused on abstract beauty and finding beauty in things that people might normally find, macabre. Goth is a very beautiful. It is a very beautiful subculture. But to sit there and say that, oh yeah, goth is inherently leftist, like, because it came from punk, it's like, oh.
Yeah, no, it's dumb as fuck. And the radical feminists love using Lilith. Yeah, they do. So do the lib fems, though. So do the liberal feminists. The liberal feminists use Lilith as some kind of like sex icon, as an excuse to like say that sex work is empowering, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, with the assumption that it's incompatible, like part of that is the belief that conservatism automatically contradicts the principles of occultism, which isn't true, especially if you're talking the left-hand path. And again, I feel like I'm going to have to reiterate this point throughout the show. We're not talking about conservative politics. We're talking about conservative values, okay? Which could be... I suppose a better way to put it would be traditional values, not so much conservative. It does align with conservatism, but I suppose it's more using the term. I think the term traditional would be more appropriate to what it is that we're talking about. Traditional values, and when we talk traditional values, like again, just reiterating. So when we talk family, we're talking a nuclear family: mom, dad, kids, right? In the picture, right? Dad's the breadwinner, right? Mom takes care of the kids, mom takes care of the home, right? And not in the sense of like the mother's oppressed. I mean, you were telling me the other day that like, you like doing things that are wifely and, things of that nature.
I cleaned the house today and I did not feel depressed. I did not start singing that song that was going around on TikTok when the election was like, all day, every day, therapist, mother maid. Like, I didn't fucking start singing that to myself, going, oh, I'm such a poor, oppressed woman. Look at me and my cleaning. Like, if I left the cleaning to you, I would be concerned that it wouldn't get done to my standard.
Fair enough.
So I like things a certain way. I like nurturing my home. I like... It sounds so stupid, but I like making you a sandwich. Like... Because like it's like an act of love, like I clean my house as an act of love. It's an act of love to you. It's an act of love to myself. It's an act of love to my cats, Believe it or not, animals prefer living in a clean home. So it's an act of love to everyone who resides in this house. Me making you food. I also make myself some food at the same time because I'm not oppressed and I'm allowed to eat.
Yeah.
And before my man.
And she asks, like, I don't request it. Yeah. She's like, hey, I'm gonna go do this. Would you like one?
Yeah.
It's just a back and forth thing, right? I mean, I generally do the dishes. Like there's a thing, right? So today she fed the cats, but normally I feed the cats and I'll do the dishes, right? And that's something that I do all the time. Something that she does all the time. She cleans out the cat boxes, right? And it's just kind of dividing, that work up appropriately, and where we feel comfortable, right? And
I do all the laundry as well.
I just
because I feel like if you did the laundry, you might put something in it that ruins the clothes. Like put a red thing in with whites or something.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong. You're probably not wrong. You know, so it's just one of those things that, you know, there's a back and forth. And when it comes to tech shit, like, you know, I'm the tech head in the house.
And you also put, like, shelves up and stuff.
Like, you know,
You'll fix things.
Yeah, so, like, you know, something needs to be fixed, something needs to be added to the house. I mean, you know, I jump on that and I do that. You know, installing Ethernet. I installed an Ethernet cable the other day for the computer so it didn't, like, overwhelm the Wi-Fi bandwidth. So, you know, it's just, you know, there's a separation between, you know, there's things that I'm good at, there's things that she's good at, there's things that she prefers to do, there's things that I prefer to do, and inside of that's divided, right? You know, it's none of this, like some of this disgusting shit that I've seen on like TikTok of these women on there that are like, you know, I don't pay any bills, I don't clean the house, I don't make food for my husband, you know, or my partner, you know, I just take care of me and I take care of my kids, but you know, he has to fend for himself, you know, and it's like,
is your husband not your family?
Exactly.
Is your husband not part of your family? Part of your, like, why are you separating him from your, like, family unit?
Exactly. So, and I think that traditional values kind of respects that dynamic, you know, which is an important dynamic, right? You know, the role of the male in a partnership in a family is being, you know, the protector, right? I'm just not sure if you need either of the labels of conservative or libertarian to appreciate or adopt values from each. So here's the problem, right? It draws a line in the sand. So one thing that I found when you try to avoid labels, so a lot of people, like, especially when it comes to this, like, they want to try to avoid labels because they don't want to be misunderstood or have it misconstrued or anything like that. And so what happens is it's drawing a line in the sand saying that these are my ideas and these are my values and these are the things that I appreciate, and they're not going to change, right? Unfortunately, there is a lot of psychological play that I've seen that happens in modern day culture, that when somebody talks about, you know, certain aspects of their lives that they appreciate without putting that line in the sand, what ends up happening is you get 1,000 people start to chime in telling them how oppressed they are. So if she were to go online and say what she just said on a TikTok or on an Instagram video, simply saying, I like making my man a sandwich, you know, the amount of people that are going to chime in on that and say that she's oppressed because she made me a fucking sandwich. Yeah, how many times have I made you dinner? You know, like, you know, a shit ton, right?
Made me dinner the other day at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, it draws a line in the sand. Do you need the label? No, but the problem is so we can't have it both ways, right? Like, I agree with you. Like, I'm not a big fan of labels. I think that we can be many things at once, but at the same time, we bitch and we complain about not having the right labels, right? Or being, you know, misunderstood as one label when we're another label. Conversations I've had, for example, with Mystic is that, you know, in society, we require labels. Labels are the things that kind of help us understand where we are in society and how people associate themselves with us, and whether or not they believe that, you know, their ideals or their ideas can, you know, align with ours and they're able to have a conversation with us. So unfortunately, it's like we want to have our cake and eat it too, and it doesn't work that way. We can either completely throw all the labels out altogether, or we have to own up to them. You know, identity politics. Identity politics is fucked, right? Like, I mean, running like identity politics has completely destroyed, you know, the political, you know, atmosphere, just like all like in one foul swoop. But again, like when we're talking about this, I don't like, you know, saying like, I don't like talking about kind of like the political aspect of it, right? Because I think the political aspect of conservatism and stuff like that needs to stand by itself, because I think that's a completely different thing. Okay, let's try something a bit harder then. Because my issue is the label and self-limiting box. Okay, you say you appreciate the family conservative values, but what happens when that group is pro-gun? I mean, I'm full Second Amendment supporter. I've grown up with guns since I was 7. I've been shooting guns since I was 7 years old. So I come from a family that hunts. Deer season was a big season for my family because it gave us a lot of food for the year. With beef jerky, stuff like that, or like jerky venison. So yeah, like it. It's one of those things that I believe that, like, when it comes to guns, when it comes to any weapon, it's like when people start talking about like nuclear weapons, right? Like they keep asking, like, why does it exist?
Dumbest question ever.
I mean, it exists because it exists, and the thing is once the cat's out of the bag, you can't put it back in, right? The thing is like, you can try to do whatever you want to do to try to ban everything, but the thing is it's not going to make it go away. It doesn't make it go away. It still exists. It's still there. And, I believe that, a firearm is the universal equalizer. I'm a proud card carrying, concealed carry permit,
As a woman in the UK, I am also pro Second Amendment, purely because any form of self-defense in this country is illegal. Pepper spray is considered an illegal firearm. You can't have a knuckle duster. You can't have anything that could remotely injure another person. The best I've got to defend myself is a rape alarm. The best I've got is a bracelet saying, please don't rape me. So I am full fucking Second Amendment. Mm-hmm. Because over here, you realise what it is not to have that privilege. You realise what it is not to have that freedom. When you are walking alone at night, and people might go, oh, why'd you walk alone at night then? I should be able to. And sometimes you haven't got another option. Sometimes that is the only option you've got. Mm-hmm. And you are looking over your shoulder constantly. You're holding your key between your fingers, even though you know that that's not going to do shit if someone genuinely wants to harm you. Or you have to call someone while you're walking home. Or there's been times where I've ran home. You don't know what that fear is unless you've lived it. Mm-hmm. So that is why I am pro Second Amendment and pro gun, because I'm pro self-defense. Mm-hmm. If someone's pro gun, it doesn't mean they're pro kill.
Exactly.
It's not the same thing.
Well, I mean, it goes back to kind of like, when I was a kid, like I was taught very early on to, respect the weapon. You respect the power that it has. It is a tool that is specifically designed to end lives, right? That is what it is, designed to do. And, we were told, me and my siblings, at a very young age, it's like, this right here, this is like, this is the business end of the weapon, and you do not point this at anyone ever or anything unless you fully, like, are committed to pulling that trigger, and it's just one of those things that I've never killed anyone. Like, I mean, I am the, like, if you look at me and you look at my life and how I grew up, I am the definition of what I think that, an active shooter should be. And that thought never crossed my mind. That never crossed my mind. Were there people that I disliked in school? Yeah, but would I ever harm them? Like that? No. It's just not an option. I've never shot a human being. Have I gone hunting? Yeah, I've gone hunting. But, you know, I feel that it is the ultimate equalizer when it comes to a situation like, I mean, I would feel significantly more comfortable if she was able to carry a 22 in her purse. You know, like, I'm just going to be honest. I mean, yeah, it's a fucking pea shooter, but, those peas hurt. You know, they cause some fucking damage. So yeah, I mean, I've got a concealed carry, you know, in the state of New York, which is not an easy state to get a CCP in. You know, so it's just one of those things that, yeah, I mean, somebody breaks into your house. Like, here's the thing. Like, I mean, I think about it this way, right? First and foremost, the Second Amendment was designed for people to be able to not only defend their families, their homes, and their property, but also kind of for the United States to defend itself, right? The people of the United States defend itself from the government when and where necessary, right? And so when I think about it, if somebody breaks into my house, right, I'm not asking questions, you know. Not going for protection or hunting, for food, but why are semi and fully automatic weapons needed? Well, first and foremost, fully automatic weapons have been banned since the 80s. So a fully automatic weapon, unless you're modding a weapon, you can't get a fully automatic weapon that's military grade only. Semi-automatic, everything's semi-automatic. Even a Glock, a P911, like, which are those are pistols, right? Those are 9mm pistols. Those are semi-automatic. Semi-automatic, simply what semi-automatic means is as many times as you can squeeze that trigger, as many times it shoots a bullet. That's all that means. So and the thing is most school shootings, like if we're talking about school shootings, most school shootings happen with a pistol, right? So they want you to be afraid of an AR-15, which is a semi-automatic rifle, which uses a 5.56 round. And it's a hunting rifle. Just because it looks scary, it looks like a military weapon, right? AR, again, it doesn't mean automatic rifle. It means Armalite, which is the name of the company that makes it. Right? So it's a semi-automatic rifle. The amount of shootings that actually happen with an AR-15, you can count them on one hand. Most shooters, in most public shooters, not just school shooters, but most deaths, gun deaths happen with a handgun, right? Or a shotgun. Those are the two most popular weapons used in those circumstances. So
the thing is as well, right, is like, even if, you know, people over here, right, in the UK, they love to point the finger at Americans and go like, oh, you know, school shootings, things like that, right? Our knife crime is through the fucking roof. Every day in the news, there's a new story about a kid. The most recent one I read was a 14-year-old boy got stabbed to death on a bus, and the mother said she wasn't surprised. That is the reality we live in now in this country. And you ain't allowed a fucking gun here unless you're a farmer and you've got some kind of special license to own a shotgun. Like, that's as far as it goes in terms of guns here.
Yeah.
But, you know, knife crime, through the fucking roof.
The thing is if somebody wants to kill somebody, they're going to kill somebody. I think it was there recently in Germany.
Oh my God, yeah.
There's a guy that just drove his car through like 200 people. You know, like, how many people did he kill? Like, at least 2.
5, I think.
5 people were killed and like 30 others were injured.
Little kids fucking died, you know?
He just took his car and just, like, as fast as he could, he just drove through a crowd of people at a Christmas market in Germany. You know?
And then something happened in New Orleans recently, didn't it?
I didn't see that.
Very similar happened. Drive.
Oh, yeah. So the thing is it's like, you know, if someone wants to do something stupid, they're going to do something stupid. Banning or restricting shit, it's not going to stop it, right? You know, and I think the thing is instead of looking at the tool that's causing the damage, look at why the damage is happening to begin with, right? That's my stance on it. I think it's more important to look at why these things are happening instead of what is being used to make them happen. Because I think if we take the stance of kind of trying to dig into it and trying to understand on a deeper level, you know, why people are doing these things, why they feel that this is like their only outlet, you know, or that they find that this is right, it might not stop somebody from doing it. But if we put enough research and enough time into it, like we do with anything, we will be able to gather enough information to maybe be able to do something, to have some preemptive actions like precursors, things that we can look at to identify people that might be at risk for something like that and help them with whatever the fuck it is that they're dealing with so they don't reach that point, right? So I think that that's kind of like the more important aspect of it, is why somebody feels like that's something that they need to do. You know, is it an overnight solution? No, but nothing is. Exactly. You know, but I think if we put enough time, effort, and research into it, you know, and you know, we look at, you know, identifying markers from, you know, previous events that have happened, you know, we might be able to come up with something that might help somebody. And here's another thing. I'm not against, you know, gun laws. Mm-hmm. You know what the biggest problem with gun laws is? Here's the biggest problem with gun laws that nobody talks about. Everybody wants to talk about putting more gun laws on the books. How about we enforce the ones that are already on the books? There are hundreds upon hundreds of laws for guns and all types of firearms in the United States, and more than half of them are just completely skipped over. They're not enforced. So if you want gun laws, cool. I have no problem with it. But let's start by enforcing the ones that are already on the books, and then see how that does. And then once they're done enforcing that, and we still see that there's a problem, then we can revisit the conversation. But when you have, you know, easily 120, 130 laws on the books about guns, and only 20 or 30 of them are actually enforced, you're going to run into a problem. You know, a lot of the laws that people are suggesting for gun laws are already on the books. They're just not enforced. You know, psychological examinations, background checks, you know, all of these types of things. I think the only loophole at the time, you know, when all this really started to hit the fan like hard, was like gun shows. I think gun shows was like the biggest loophole, because like gun show sales didn't need to have like background checks and stuff like that because it was a gun show, and that was changed and now is being enforced. Is the whole mainstream conservative stance on abortions. My understanding is that the average conservative is not pro-choice. Is that true?
Average conservative? Yeah, probably not, especially if they're Christian. Yeah. That's usually what they use to back up their point, which I think if you're using religion to back up a point,
you don't really have one.
Yeah. So when it comes to pro-life, pro-choice, I think that is much more of a spectrum rather than it being
black or white.
Yeah, because someone might say, "Oh, I'm pro-life unless it's incest or rape," or "I'm pro-life unless the mother's life is in danger," and things like that. It's a very nuanced topic. I'm definitely not in the. Sorry, I was just reading a comment. I'm definitely not entirely pro-life or pro-choice.
Same.
I think that, you know, if someone is raped, they should be under no obligation to carry that pregnancy to term. I think that if the mother's life is in danger, she should absolutely not have to carry that pregnancy to term. And the thing is like people want to have you believe that that is happening, that women are dying because their life is in danger, and you know, ectopic pregnancies and things like that. The removal of an ectopic pregnancy is not classed as an abortion. It's classed as a completely different medical procedure. So that's one thing. Like, people going, oh, what about ectopic pregnancies? That you have to remove an ectopic pregnancy. It's not a viable pregnancy, therefore it doesn't count as an actual abortion. Yep. So, you know, nuances, right? I'm not in. If we go full like pro-choice to the far end of pro-choice, right, where people believe that abortion should be celebrated, I absolutely do not believe that abortion should be celebrated. If someone needs to have an abortion, that is a difficult choice to make, and it is a traumatic event to go through. It's not to be celebrated. It's a tragedy. You have an unwanted pregnancy. That is a tragedy, because you now have to put yourself, like, even if you don't believe that the fetus is alive yet, it's a tragedy that you have to put yourself through that process. Abortions are not good for you. They are not good for your body. They damage you. So, you know what? There was this girl in my friendship group at school, and I remember she had like 3 abortions or something, purely from just irresponsibility. And that's when I'm like, yeah, I'm not pro-choice because of shit like that. But then, you know, I might think back to a situation where someone has gotten pregnant through a really shitty situation, and then it's like, yeah, I'm pro-choice. You know, it's nuanced. It depends on the circumstances. So,
I mean, I do think that each situation needs to be looked at. I do think that also term limits are important to implement.
Absolutely.
I do not agree with full term abortions. I think that that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, C-sections are a thing. Adoption is a thing. Like, I mean, carrying a baby almost to, like, I mean, I was born a month early, so I was like, you know, I was a preemie, and obviously I'm still here, right? So that's my point. It's a matter of specific circumstances, and hence why I'm cautious of labels. I think black and white dualities are inherently problematic. I would agree with you there, Gray. I mean, I do think that, you know, going black and white with it, which is why, like, I think it's also important to draw the distinction when we're talking about conservatism. Again, we're not talking about politics. You know, we're talking about, you know, life values. And I think the reason why it's important to talk about it, and the reason it's important for us to have this discussion, is there are a lot of occultists out there that are afraid to talk about it. There's a lot of occultists out there that feel that, you know, if they were to talk about their values, that, you know, they would be ostracized, you know, from the communities that they love and adore, you know, because they have an opinion instead of being able to have a conversation. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the label thing, Gray, but I think that sometimes a label helps people, like I said, you know, from the beginning, to like allow people to figure out where they're going to be most comfortably like, you know, placed. You know, like, are these my people? Like, can you know, is this my tribe? Can you know, are these people going to accept me for who I am? And I would definitely say that, you know, the way that I am, like, I don't judge anyone for their opinions or their thoughts, or whether they go left or they go right, or they're blue or they're red, or I don't care. You know, my judgment on a person is based on their character. You know, like, you know, do you have, you know, a strong character? You know, are you a good person in that way? And with or without a label. But I feel like sometimes the label does help people kind of, you know, find kind of like a direction to go. You know, going further into this, right? So we talked about the assumption of incompatibility, right? Conservatism automatically contradicts the principles of occultism. I don't believe so. Also, breaking down the false binary of rebellion versus tradition. That having a tradition is not being rebellious, or being rebellious is the lack of tradition. I think that's, again, we talked a lot about nuance. You know, there's a lot of nuance to that, right? Like, you can have traditions and be traditional, but also still be rebellious. You know, I mean, what do you think?
Absolutely. And I think anything is rebelling against something.
Something, yeah.
To some degree.
Definitely.
Like from the most simple thing, like, you know, if I eat, if we finish this podcast, I go eat some chicken, I'm rebelling against veganism, you know, like,
right.
or if I decided I wanted to become vegan, I'm rebelling against eating meat. Like, you're always rebelling against something. 'Cause you're always doing something that's contrary to something else.
Exactly. You know, then the other part of it, like when we do talk about the politics and the social labeling, right? Being unfairly labeled as regressive, intolerant, or authoritarian due to conservative leanings, right? Like, I think that that's another big problem is that, like, when in this day and age, when we find people that we disagree with, we have a tendency of labeling them, right? We label them with something, right? We slap a label on them because we disagree with them and saying, well, hey, you know, I think this. Do you want to talk about it? Like, I'm curious of why you think the way you do because, you know, I think this way about it. You know, is there a common ground that we can find? You know, and that's how we find common ground is these conversations, right? Like, it's not, I don't want to change anyone's values. You know, provided enough evidence, I'm completely open to changing my perspective on things. You know, I'm only human.
I don't have a problem if you label me and it's accurate. Because the thing is, like, labeling is a part of language and it's a part of how we understand concepts. But if you start labeling me as things that I'm not, like, you're a colonizer, that's, like, my favourite one. It's like, what the fuck have I got anything to do with colonization? And what have I colonized? You know, like, when, like, most countries have been colonized at some point, it just doesn't make any fucking sense. It's just, like, shit like that, like, shit that's got nothing to do with me. You know, when you're labeled things that just, like, aren't true, or, like, you're labeled a fascist or something like that because someone doesn't agree with what you said. So it's just like...
You know, I mean, there's a lot more to go over here, right? So some of the points that we have to kind of talk about, we've kind of really dived into a lot of this stuff, you know, at length. And, you know, we're already going a little bit over here, but I do kind of want to cover kind of some more of this stuff, right? Because, you know, so we've got into point 2, which is the common misconceptions. Point 3 is navigating tensions in occult communities. So finding common ground, right? Emphasizing shared goals, such as spiritual growth, personal empowerment, and freedom of thought. So this is something that I think that all occultists are going for, regardless of what, you know, your values are, you know, in your life and how you live your life. I think finding that common ground is so important.
Yeah, and you and me both have had experiences of, like, having conversations with other occultists where the gnosis completely lines up. But then as soon as it gets into, like, political shit, there's just all this tension. But when in actuality you have the same common goal. Yeah,
exactly. But then it's like we like people, either the people that are against the idea feel like they need to hide what they're thinking, otherwise they're going to be ostracized, or the people that, you know, the other side of it, you know, feels like they have to push their point harder because, you know, they're being disagreed with. And there's a fear, like there's an inherent fear that happens. So if we look at it, I believe that the ridiculous amount of tension and verbal violence that happens in these conversations, I fully believe that most of these can be rooted in fear, right? So either fear of being ostracized, fear of being taken advantage of, fear of not being understood. You know, I think that, you know, when we look at kind of like a liberal standpoint, I mean, both sides, right? You know, there's kind of like this fear of kind of like there's this almost like a childhood trauma that comes up, right? Where like, oh, this person disagrees with me, I need to change their opinion. I think, you know, if we remove the idea of needing to change somebody's opinion, right? I see a lot of an empath would never eat meat or vote conservative. That is all BS. You can be any combo of things. Exactly. You know, and I think that that's what causes the tension, is that there's fear involved in that, and then because of that fear, we're afraid to have a conversation, right? I think some people are afraid of changing their opinion. Right? I think that that's one thing. They're afraid that they're going to be met with something and be like, oh shit, maybe I'm wrong. Left or right doesn't fucking matter, right? Because you get bullshit on both sides. Like saying that I'm a traditionalist or I'm a conservative, on my lifestyle perspectives, not necessarily politically. I think the best way to label me would be kind of like classic liberal, which would be kind of fiscally conservative but socially progressive. And so it's kind of like I change my opinion all the time. Yeah, I mean, so I think some people are just kind of afraid of changing their opinion. But I think, if you're provided enough information, you're like, oh shit, I'm always open to it, right? So I want to have conversations with people. I don't want to get into screaming matches. I don't want to get into fights and arguments. Like, if you want to talk to me about your perspective and your point, then talk to me about it. Like Gray, for example. Gray quite obviously disagrees with quite a bit of what we're saying, but I love the way that, Gray is handling it, right? He's asking, they're asking certain points and, getting the answer and then kind of going through it and trying to stabilize their points. And
there's no aggression, there's no name calling, it's just a conversation.
Mm-hmm. That's the perfect way to handle it. That's the perfect way to handle it. Like, and there's a common
which I'm very just like, fascist.
Right. And I think that, there is common ground there, right? So it's definitely, that's how a conversation should happen. Even if you disagree with somebody, ask questions. And then be asked questions. Like, it's not a one-sided thing, right? Like, I would want to know, like, on a more in-depth personal kind of level, you know what I mean? I would like to sit down with Gray and be like, all right, well, why do you think the way you do? Right? And dig into that topic, dig into that discussion, right? So exactly, right? The ability to be open to being wrong, right? Or misinformed, right? So sure, we agree on a lot more than we disagree, probably. So it's just one of those things that, these are the type of people that, like, for example, that I want to be around, that are able to kind of have, those kind of discussions and things like that and actually have a conversation. So let's see here. So finding common ground, defending personal beliefs without alienation, right? I think this entire podcast is showing that, right? Defending your personal beliefs without alienation. So being respectful and engaging in a discussion, actually having a discussion, not calling someone out and saying you're fucking wrong, you're this, you're that, you're a libtard, you're whatever. Don't do that. Right? Don't do that. If you're in a group of people that you want to be involved in, that you want to talk to, that you want to spend time with, then don't be an asshole. Right? I think that, like, across the board, regardless of what, like, values you lean towards, don't be a dick. It's that simple, right? And there's a lot more to this, but we just simply being truly open-minded. Yeah, definitely. So I don't think we're going to have time to go through it. If you guys want a part 2 on this, put it in the comments after the live is over, right? Just type part 2, please, or part 2 in the comments. And I think, if we get 10?
Yeah, if we get 10, we'll do another.
Yeah, if we get 10 comments saying part 2 in the comments, then we'll do a part 2 to this, because we only got up to what?
Fourth point.
Fourth point, and there's a total of 9. So there's another 5 points to go over, right? Going over, so just to give you guys an example of some of the other points, right? Practical strategies for conservative occultists, so building a community, engaging in constructive debate, finding role models in occult history, examples of compatibility, challenges specific to relationships, coping with external criticism, turning challenges into opportunities. All of these things, right, are, things that are listed here for us to go over. It's an extensive thing to talk about. So if you guys want a part 2, put it in the comments. We'll do a part 2. If you never want to hear about this shit again, then
Say, don't do a part 2, please.
if you don't want
fascist.
if you don't want to see another video like this about talking about conservative values and the occult and all that stuff, you never want to see it again, I would say put a vomit emoji. Like,
just
that's
unsubscribe, because we'll probably do it anyway.
Maybe. So I think Satanism draws some pretty dualistic lines in the sand. For example, the satanic tenets, but those dualistic perspectives often unravel for me. No, I agree with you. Definitely. No, guys, you've been fucking amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming here. Alvaro, good. Alvaro, Riega. Vomit emoji.
Fuck you guys.
So good to see you. Great to have some new faces in here. Gray, thank you for the awesome questions. Those are fucking amazing. Nocturne, you're awesome. Maeve, good to see you on the regular, man. All right. And we'll see you guys in the next one. As always, hail thy fucking self. See you in the next one. Peace out.